business that we will be dealing with in this course. So, okay, so we are talking about analysis and design of algorithms. So what exactly will we do in this course? Okay, so let's start with a warm up of that today. Right. So before we actually delve into, the real technical things, so this is a slide which I like to show every time. So because I'm sort of intrigued by this fact that the word algorithms is actually derived from the name of this Arabic mathematician who is called Al-Khwarizmi. And yeah, he used to live in the 9th century. And the reason that the word algorithm has been an ode to this person is because he actually developed a method for adding numbers. Yeah, it's as simple as that. So it's like the method which you learn as a second grader or a third grader, right? Just to have two big numbers and add them up, right? Digit by digit. So, but the point is that, what he did was he developed a technique which has a few interesting properties. So first of all, they're mechanical. So what I mean by mechanical is when you have these numbers and I teach you this method, then you don't really have to apply a lot of cleverness in order to apply this algorithm. You might have to have some cleverness in designing this method, but once I teach you this method or I teach my computer this method, this is completely mechanical. Yeah, you just keep doing whatever you have been asked to do. This is almost like baking a cake. So you know how much flour to take, how many eggs to mix to that, how much sugar to put in, and all that. So this is a step-by-step recipe, right? It's completely mechanical. Okay, it's unambiguous. This is very important. So your algorithm cannot have statements like you can do this or you can do this as well if you want. So you cannot have statements like this. They have to be completely unambiguous. So each and every step should be doing something very, very specific. Yeah. But more importantly, they have to be correct and efficient. Yeah. So now, when we talk about simple algorithms like adding, maybe the correctness just pops out of the algorithm itself. So sometimes, you will see this, okay, this algorithm has to be correct. There is no way that it can be wrong. But as we will see for much of this course, that this is not always the case. So you really need to understand why certain algorithms are correct and why are they always giving you the correct answer. And that's not always obvious. Yeah. And this is where we would need some of the proof techniques that I am talking about. So we will know how to prove correctness of algorithms formally. You might have seen some of that in your data structures course, but we will be doing that even more rigorously in this course. So yes, this course would be a mix of theoretical proofs as well as some applications of them. Okay, efficient. Yeah, this efficiency part is very, very important. And the reason is that, at the end of the day, the reason we are learning algorithms is because we want to write programs. Although algorithms essentially transcends the notion of programming. Yeah. So algorithms by themselves form a subject. They might have nothing to in fact do with programming. You can use algorithms in several different ways. And hopefully I can give you a flavor of some of those things by the end of the course, when we talk about the wider world of algorithms. But okay, for now we know that we have to design an algorithm and write a program. So they better be efficient. I mean, my program should not run for 1 year or 2 years. Yeah, they should give me an answer within a reasonable amount of time. Yeah. So these are the 4 properties that essentially will make a good algorithm. And Al-Khwarizmi designed such an algorithm to add up numbers. Not only add, he designed algorithms for multiplying numbers, dividing numbers, even finding square roots of numbers. Okay. So he designed all these mechanical procedures to do these things. And remember, he did not have a computer. He just did this like manually. Okay. So anyway, that was just kind of a trivia. Okay. So let's start with this example again, which all of us. So I guess this is one of the early algorithms that we all learn as a second grader or a third grader. This is just to multiply a couple of numbers. Okay. And especially, let's say I want to multiply large numbers. So if I, of course, ask you to multiply 2 small numbers, let's say 2 single-digit number, wo to we can do, right? It's almost ingrained in our brain. If I ask you 8 times 4, like 32 just pops out of your mouth. But if I ask you to multiply 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1, 2, 3, 4, well, unless you are somebody like Shakuntala Devi, you cannot do this instantly. Like, you need to do this step-by-step procedure. Okay, so let's formally see what this problem is. Okay, what is this problem formally asking me to do? Well, suppose I have two n-digit numbers, okay, and the numbers are capital A and capital B. So what you are asked to do is find the product of these two numbers. Okay, so which is A times B. And whenever we want to talk about algorithms, and because we want to analyze the correctness and efficiency, we need to have a notion of what we call primitive operations. Okay, and primitive operations is something which you can imagine you have for free. Okay, that does not mean that that does not eat up your resource, but what I mean by primitive operation is you don't need to design an algorithm to perform the primitive operations. Those are sort of given to us. Okay, and for this problem, let's assume that the primitive operations are that we can multiply or add two single digit integers. Okay, so as I was saying that, yeah, it's relatively easy to add two single digit numbers, or to sort of or multiply two single digit numbers, and so on and so forth. So suppose those are my primitive operations. So let's see how we can utilize these two things in order to perform our multiplication. So what is the technique that we learn as a third grader? Okay, so suppose now I want to multiply this. So I guess all of us know how to do this, but let me just write down the product anyway. So what we do is we take this, we take the row above, and we compute what I call the partial products. Okay, so in the first row we compute the partial product of the row above with 4, let's say. Yeah, and because I have already done this, so let me just copy this down. So this is going to be 2, 1, 7, 2, 2. Okay, so that's my first partial product, right? Okay, so now let's sit back and think about this a little bit. So when I did this, if I have n digits in the two numbers, then how many primitive operations did I really do here? Can anyone tell me? So how many primitive operations do I need in order to create this? No, I'm just asking for this single row. Yeah, no, n squared to dur ki baat hai. So let's say instead of 4 digits, I have n number of digits in each of the numbers. So all I'm asking is to compute one partial product. How many primitive operations did I do? Okay, so let's see what are the primitive operations that I have really done here. Well, I multiplied two numbers, and I multiplied n numbers with a single number, right? N single digit number with a single digit. So I multiplied all of 5, 6, 7, 8 with 4. So that takes roughly n number of multiplications, right? So hash multiplications is equal to n, and but that's not all, right? Why is that not all? Because I also need to take care of this carry business. Yeah, remember, so when I have a product, so for example 8 times 4 is 32, but then I carry the first digit here and I just add it to the next product. Yeah, so as many of you have come up with the answer, indeed 2n minus 1 is the right answer, because I need to do n number of multiplications, and then I need to do sort of n minus 1 number of additions as well, right? So the total number of operations, yeah, so okay, yeah, it could be less sometimes, yeah, depending on what numbers you are multiplying, but in the worst case this is really going to be 2n minus 1. It cannot be more than that. Okay, and remember, we are always talking about the worst case in this class. So what is the maximum number of operations that you will need? So that cannot exceed 2n minus 1. Okay, so good. So let me write down the other partial products quickly. So this is going to be 1, 7, 0, 3, 4, and I pad that with a 0 here. Then this is 1, 1, 3, 5, 6, Okay, and this is 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, good. So that's the thing. Okay, there's a question. If while adding the carry, there is another carry, then will that be another operation? What does that mean? Yeah, but that's what is making this 2n, right? Yeah. So you have a, so basically think about this, that you have a carry from every ith digit to every I plus 1th digit, right? So that's the addition that you need to perform. So this will be 2n minus 1, right? Yeah. Okay. So this gives me what? 700 6652. Okay, there's a question. Right. So yeah, so that's what I said, right? So, oh yeah, so 28 plus 3 I consider, okay. So let's say addition, I consider it to be like a primitive, right? So this 28 plus 3 is like one operation. So and then you carry the 3. So that's exactly the point. So I don't understand your confusion yet. Uh, yeah. Okay. So right. Okay, but now let's see, like what is the total number of operations that I have done in this case, right? So what is the total number of operations that I carried out in this entire process of multiplying and getting this final product? Well, it's like roughly 2n. So let's just do some approximation here. So this is roughly 2n here. Yeah. And then this is that, but then I have n many rows here, right? So there are n rows. Okay, so there is a question here. For getting the carry, we are doing 31 modulo 10. Yeah, so that's what I said. So I am not being so formal yet. So I'm just assuming that this extracting the carry digit and adding is like one single operation. Yeah. Right, or if you want to be more specific, you can assume it to be 3n or something like that. Yeah, you can, but the whole point is that it would be some constant times n. Yeah, so I understand there could be all these little things, that the coefficient of n could be 3 or 4 depending on what you exactly define as a primitive operation. So what I was having in mind is, yeah, this extraction of this digit and carrying it on to the next thing, it's like this entire thing is one operation, like adding and doing that. Yeah, but that does not really change the message that I'm going to put across. Okay, right. So now, of course, okay, we know that for each row I'm spending like constant times n, but then I have like roughly n many rows. So the total number of operations, so hash operations, is going to be something like, let's say, some constant c times n squared. Okay, this I think every one of us understand. If you want to compute it exactly, you can do that. It would be something like, I guess, 3 times n plus 1 or something like that. But what I'm trying to convey is, yeah, it's going to be c times n squared. I mean, the dominating term for this multiplication operation is going to be c times n squared. Yeah. All right. So now the point is, okay, all that is fine. I mean, we all learned this as a third grader. Yeah. So there's a question, the final addition. Okay. So what about the final addition? So how much will it add, the final addition? So Soham, can you tell me? So he asked, what about the final addition? Yes, we did a final addition, but how many additions do you need to do in order to carry out the final addition? It's only going to add another n square to your number of operations. Exactly, right? Because there are n rows and you are adding like n numbers, n single digit numbers for each of the columns, right? So there are n columns, and yeah. So that gives you the c times n squared thing. Okay, good. So, but let's kind of ignore the C part a little bit, and let's just think about the n square part. And why do I say that? The reason I say that is because, the way our number of operations is going to increase is much more heavily dependent on the n part rather than the C part, because the C part is going to be small. I mean, okay, maybe instead of 4, it will be 5 or 7. But note that if I'm really multiplying large numbers, then the moment n becomes, let's say you multiply a 10-digit number, but then if you multiply a 20-digit number, then your running time will actually become 4 times. Yeah. So the moment you make the length of your integers 2 times, the number of operations is required suddenly becomes 4 times. Yeah. If the length becomes 4 times, it will become 16 times of what you require. So this is really increasing in a sort of a quadratic fashion, right? So now that brings us to this question, and this is a question that I think you should ingrain in your brain right from day one. So as an algorithmist, here is a question that we always ask: can we do better? Should we be satisfied with this process, which will sort of require order n square amount of time, or some constant times n square amount of operations? Okay. So should we be satisfied with this, or can we do better? That's the question we want to ask. Yeah. And this is going to be the spirit of this entire course. So we will try to figure out what is the best way to do this. Or if we come up with a relatively naive way, then we should always ask, can we do it slightly better? Okay. And this has been the guiding principle of algorithmists, ever since this started. Okay, so here is another here is another insight to this entire procedure. Okay, now this might be a bit abstract at the beginning, but hopefully it will start making sense as we make more progress. So okay, so what is the basic principle that we applied in the third grade multiplication algorithm? Well, we multiplied the top row with each of the digits in the bottom row. Okay, but instead of that, let me just do it in a completely different way. So suppose I break up the numbers into blocks. Okay. So let's say for the first number, the first 2 blocks, I call that A. So 56, I call A. 78, I call B. Similarly, for the second number, I call 12 to be C and 34 to be D. So these are like blocks of Y numbers. Yeah. So I just split the numbers into blocks. Why did I do that? So now here is what I will do. Okay. Suppose I compute A times C. Now, I know what you're going to ask. You will ask that, okay, how do you actually compute A times C? Because those are not single digit numbers. That's fine. I'm not saying that this is a primitive operation. But suppose that somehow I am able to compute A times C. Yeah, right? I can do that. I mean, of course, now I have written this answer because I know how to multiply 2 numbers. But suppose by some magic, you are able to compute A times C. Suppose you can do that. Yeah. Similarly, suppose you can also compute B times D. Okay. And now I'm going to pull a rabbit out of a hat, sort of. Okay. What I will do is I will also compute a third product, which is going to be A plus C times B plus D. Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm computing 3 quantities. I'm computing A times C, I'm computing B times D, and I'm computing A plus C times B plus D. Okay. Everybody understands what we're doing here? Nothing fancy. So I split my numbers into blocks and I just ended up multiplying. I found these products. All right. Now, why did I do that? Okay. You may ask that, okay, what good does this serve? Well, here is the thing. I have a step 4 where I will compute 3 minus 2 minus 1. Okay. So I will take this thing. So this is 3, right? And I will subtract these 2 from that number. And that turns out to be 2840. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. And once I have that, I will do a final step, okay, which is step 5. And step 5 is going to look something like it. I will take step 1. So I will take this product and I will pad 4 zeros at the end. Okay. Then I will take the second thing, which is B times D, and I will pad nothing actually. So I will just say 2652. Right. And then I will do what? Okay, take the quantity from step 4, and I will add 2 zeros at the end. Okay. So, 8. Okay. So I will just add these 3 things up, and magically what you will find is you land up with the same product. Okay. So what you will find is that you have just computed the same thing. So 7006652. Okay. This is the same product that you have got with the third grader technique. So, okay, why am I saying all this? So first of all, the reason I'm saying this is this should already tell you that, you know, when you see a problem, it's not necessary that there is only one technique to solve that problem. We have already saw two different techniques, right? And we will see where this second technique is going to take us. I mean, why do we even care about this technique when we already have one? That remains to be seen. But at least we should start appreciating that there is another way of doing this thing. Okay. So, but at least this is correct. This is giving me the correct answer. So let's now make it a bit more formal, and let's now try to introduce some jargons. Okay. So what I am looking at here, or what I am trying to design here, is what we call a recursive algorithm. Okay. So all of you, I guess, are familiar with the notion of recursion, because that's a very important primitive as part of your programming repertoire, right? But what is really a recursive algorithm? Okay. And remember, I really request you to do this. So in an algorithms class, please start thinking in a bit more abstract way. So don't start thinking in your programming language, because that somehow I feel that restricts you. So upon looking at a problem, you should start thinking of it as an abstract technique that you want to develop in order to solve this problem. Then you can always code it up in your language of your choice. That's just a tool to teach your computer how to do it. But as I said, algorithms transcend computers and programmings. So you should start thinking in a more abstract way about algorithms. Yeah. So what is a recursive algorithm? Well, a recursive algorithm is one which repeatedly invokes itself. Yeah. But there are two important aspects. First of all, when one recursive algorithm invokes itself, then it should invoke itself on a smaller input. Yeah. In some sense, what smaller means, of course, depends on the problem that you are solving, but it should at least invoke itself on a smaller input, not an input of the same size as the one which it started with. Okay, then this is not recursion. Okay. And secondly, you know, so it keeps invoking itself, and eventually, because the problem size are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, eventually we hope that we will reach a point where we can just use the primitive operations. Okay. So that's the entire sort of, in an abstract sense, that is what recursive algorithm is supposed to do. Yeah. So any questions about this abstract definition of a recursive algorithm? Yeah. Now, what the smaller input means, what the primitive operations are, those of course depends on the problem that you are solving. But this is the basic principle. Okay. So what we'll do now is sort of define a recursive algorithm to carry out long multiplications or large multiplications. Yeah. And this slide should already have given you a sense of why I'm talking about recursive algorithms. Okay. But let's do this a bit more formally. So here is the thing. So suppose A and B are my two numbers. Now remember, if I have a number with n digits and it's a decimal number, then I can always write it as, I can always split it up into two blocks of n digit each, right? Oh, sorry, n half digits each. And I can always express this number as 10 to the power n half times the first half plus the second half. Okay. So in this example, for instance, 5678, this number 5678, I can write this as 100 times 56 plus 78. So here my small a is 56 and small b is 78, for example. Okay. So I hope everyone understands that. Good. So now, if I write A times B in terms of this small a's and small b's, then how does the product look like? Well, it looks like something like this. So this is 10 to the power of n times AC plus, so I tend to make mistakes here. So please let me know if I'm doing something wrong. Okay. So what will happen now? This is AC. No, AD plus BC, right? So this is AD plus BC, and at the end I have BD. Okay, yeah, right. So I can express the product as in this fashion because I have written capital A and capital B in these two sort of this way. All right. Okay, but how does that help us? So what is the idea? So what is the idea now? So the idea is to recursively compute AC, AD, BC, and BD. Okay, why am I able to apply recursion here? Right? Because remember, I started off with the problem of multiplying two numbers which had n digits each. But now I have reduced my problem to multiplying two numbers, each of which has n over n half digits each. So indeed, I am now solving a smaller subproblem. Okay, a smaller problem. So the algorithm, this recursive algorithm, it's invoking itself because multiplying capital A times capital B, I am again calling multiply, but I'm calling multiply on a smaller instance of the problem. Each of these instances, AC, AD, BC, and BD, they are smaller than what we started off with. Okay. So this is the classical recursive approach that we all know about, and we are going to also do this a bit more formally. Okay. So the only thing is that, well, it's not that it's calling only one instance of the recursive subproblem, right? But it's actually invoking 4 instances of the smaller subproblem. Okay, that is a great question. So Pritish asked, how would this work if n is odd? I was hoping that I will gloss through this, but I'm very happy that he came up with this question. So yeah, so what it turns out that suppose your number of digits is 9 instead of 10, then what you can do is you can consider A to be, let's say, the first 5 digits and the second one to be the last 4 digits. Okay, the entire thing remains the same. You don't really have to pad zeros. You can just take the first floor of, n half minus 1 and n half plus 1 or something like that. Yeah, it just works as well. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, that's a duplicate slide. Okay, so now the question is, as I said, right, that yeah, Ayushi. So for now, I'm so for today, let's gloss over this thing. Yeah. So I understand your question. So what if the two numbers, what if the two numbers are of variable lengths? Yeah, then we can do some other trick. Maybe we can just pad it with zeros, as Soham was saying. Yeah, we can just add some zeros in the beginning. Yeah, I think the same thing will then work. Okay. But let's assume that we really have n digits in two numbers. Right. Okay. BD. What I made a mistake. Yeah. That's a mistake. That's. Thank you. So this should be. Sorry. This is a mistake. This should be BD. Man, what's going on? Okay, this is BD. Okay. So now, okay. So the question is, okay, we saw another technique, but as we said, okay, first of all, you should ask yourself at this point that ye jo humne kiya, right? We have this recursive procedure, but sir, why are you doing this at all? I mean, how do you convince me that this is actually better than the third gridded technique? I mean, this could still be an algorithm that takes roughly c times n square many primitive operations. We don't know that. We have not analyzed how many operations we require. So as I said, today is a warm-up. We are not going to analyze this formally, but we are going to do that in the next lecture. But at least this gives us some insight into what we can into how we can explode this multiplication algorithms. Okay, so here is another technique which can potentially perform better, and I will tell you what the technique is now. So now let's take a closer look at this product. Okay, so remember I have expressed A times D as AC, AD plus BC plus BD. Yeah, Gaurav. So that's a teaser with which I will leave you. Okay, and or why don't you figure it out and tell me in the next lecture? Yeah. So that's the thing, right? I mean, we don't know what's the complexity of the previous thing, right? So we will figure it out. Don't worry. Okay. So, but let's see a slightly different approach again. So now note that I have been able to express this product as this quantity. Now, what we observe here is that, okay, so the question we can ask here is, do we really need these 4 products individually in order to be able to compute A times B? So what do you think? Let me ask you. Do you think that we need all these products individually if we really want to? So if I just look at capital A times capital B, then what is it that I really require? Do I really require to compute all these 4 products? Okay, that's very good. So it's not 3 products, but what we can observe here is all we need here is to be able to figure out 3 quantities. Okay, what are the 3 quantities? So the first quantity is A times C, the second quantity is B times D, and the third quantity is AD plus BC. Remember, I don't care about what individually AD and BC is. As far as this product is concerned, I don't even care what the value of AD is or what the value of B times C is. All I care about is what the value of AD plus BC is, right? So as long as I can figure that out, I'm good to go. Okay, and this is the insight that that is going to give us an improvement. Okay, and let's see how. So here is an idea. So what we'll do is we'll recursively compute A times C, we'll recursively compute B times D, and we recursively compute A plus C times B plus D. And now note that the first 2 we have already talked about, but this one is also a smaller sub problem, right? Because A plus C, उसमें कितना digit हो सकता है? How many digits will A plus C have? Well, it can have at most maybe n half plus 1 digits, right? It cannot have more than that. Similarly, B plus D also has n half plus 1 digit at the most. So we are indeed, invoking the algorithm on a smaller subproblem. So what we will do is we will compute AC, BD, and A plus C times B plus D. And now, if you see, by magic, if I just do 3 minus 2 minus 1, then I will have exactly what I need. I will have AD plus BC. Okay? So even without explicitly computing AD and BC separately, just by applying this trick, which has been known for 200 years now, it was kind of discovered by Gauss. It's called Gauss's trick. So all we need to do is we recursively compute A times C, we recursively compute B times D, and we recursively compute A plus C times B plus D. And finally, we just apply this subtraction. Okay, so I'm assuming that subtraction is sort of a primitive operation. Of course, it will take some time. I mean, I'm not yet talking about time complexity or anything like that. So all I'm showing you is that there is another way of carrying out this multiplication. Okay, so there are a couple of questions. Why aren't we considering the multiplication with 10 to the n and 10 to the n half? What does that mean? No, I mean, we said, right? I mean, you can always pad some zeros and make it n. Yeah, exactly. Okay, right? So okay, so what is the upshot of all this? Well, the upshot of all this is, remember in the previous technique that we talked about, what are the number of sub problems that I spawned, or what are the number of recursive calls that this algorithm called? Well, it called 4 recursive sub problems. It called AC, AD, BC, and BD. But now I am calling only 3 recursions inside one level of, or let's say, when I want to multiply A times B, then all I'm invoking are 3 recursive calls on smaller subproblem. And then I'm just doing some preliminary addition and multiplication business with some padding or whatever maybe. Yeah, but those are easier operations. Okay. So this technique is due to a Russian named Anatoly Karatsuba. So this is known as Karatsuba's multiplication. And this is not only restricted to long multiplications, but this is also applicable to things like when we are multiplying 2 polynomials and stuff like that. Now, again, I have not formally proved that this actually gives you an improvement of runtime, but let me tell you that it indeed does. Okay. So actually, let me give you the answers. So if you invoke 4 recursive calls at each step, then it is still order of n square. Yeah, but Karatsuba will actually give you an improvement. And to figure out the actual runtime of Karatsuba, we need to wait till the next class, till I show you the master's theorem, because otherwise it's a bit difficult to. Okay. So, right. So there have been a lot of discussions and questions. So, okay, I think I have done what I wanted to cover today. So let me now see what is going on. Why aren't we multiplying AD and BC directly again? Right. So, okay. So let me take this one at a time. So Soham asks, don't we need to do AC times? Yeah, exactly. So Soham, that is exactly 3 minus 2 minus 1. And that is indeed going to take some time. So we have to consider that operation. But that's not multiplication, right? That's just subtraction. Yeah. So subtraction and addition, I mean, I'm assuming we can do, right? Okay. Okay, the next question is, why aren't we multiplying AD and BC directly again? Right, so Yash, so the point is, if you want to multiply AD and BC, then you are invoking 4 recursive calls. Yeah, in order to compute capital A times capital B, then you are invoking 4 recursive calls, which are AC, AD, BC, and AC. But we want to do everything with only 3 recursive calls. So that is why instead of computing AD and BC explicitly, we are computing A plus C and B plus D. Sorry, A plus C times B plus D. And then we are applying this Gauss's trick in order to find out AD plus BC. Yeah, because all we care about is AD plus BC. Okay, Gaurav, yes, it's n to the power of log 3. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay. All right. So any other questions about, yeah? So today we have not really analyzed anything. Yeah. So that's the thing. Okay. Okay, can you wait, don't plus 1 yet. I have to see the first thing, right? What are you plus 1ing on? Ah, okay. Can you please post the slides few days before the lecture? So I cannot promise that, because the lectures are kind of, I will try to do it maybe one day before the lecture, but few days I really can't promise, because I have not yet created the slides, right? So I just create them on the fly, but I understand. So maybe I can post them like one day prior to my lecture. Okay. Sir, will there be actually two tutes a week as according to time? No, so so that will be group wise, right? So some of the groups will have a tute on Monday, and the other groups will have a tute on Tuesday. Yeah. So not everybody has to attend 2 tutes every week. Yeah. Okay. So Gaurav, no, this should not be A plus B times C plus D, because then you won't get AD plus BC. Would you get it? Oh, is that it? Did I make a mistake here? AB plus AD plus. So what is this thing? Okay, so Gaurav has a question. Why isn't it? Okay, so let me first see if I have made a mistake here. So this is AB plus AD plus BC plus CD. And now if I subtract BD, then this, okay, there is, you are right, you are right. Okay. So there is a mistake, right? Okay, good. So somebody is paying attention. You are absolutely correct. Yeah, this is wrong, right? This should be A plus B. Should it be A plus B? Okay, this is BD. Yeah, I think you are right. This should be A plus B times C plus D, right? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Sorry, guys. So this is a mistake. Yeah. So please note, this is a mistake. So I wrote A plus C times B plus D, but this should really be A plus B times C plus D, because only then, if you subtract AC and BD, then you are going to get AD and BC. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay. What else? Are we assuming the complexity of subtraction is less than addition and multiplication asymptotically? No. So Shashank, what we are assuming is again the primitive operations. So we have not computed the runtime of this algorithm yet, right? Right? Because of course, if you are adding two n-digit numbers, then the time complexity is order n. It's not order 1. Yeah. So those things have to be considered when we analyze the runtime, for sure. Yeah. So if you subtract or add two n-digit numbers, you need order n time, because adding or subtracting each digit takes order like constant time. That's a primitive operation. Okay. Yes. So textbook and all other resources I will post on the course webpage. Okay. There is no one textbook, because I tend to teach from a lot of different places, but yeah, but it would be a combination. I mean, I will like tell you like which things to read from which textbook or stuff like that. Yeah. But some things like this which I did today, like you will find it on many textbooks, but I mean, I didn't really do it from a specific one. So the textbook which I like the most personally are two of them. So one is Algorithm Design by John Kleinberg and Eva Tardosh, and the other one is I think it's also called Algorithm Design by Papadimitriou, Vazirani, and Dasgupta. So these are the two books that I like the most. So don't worry, I will post all this material on the webpage.